British Facts.
Did you know all of these people were British? Welcome to British Facts. If I say the name Charlie Chaplin, most people immediately think American, Hollywood, silent films, black and white footage, piano playing underneath. But here's the bit people don't realise. Charlie Chaplin was British, properly British, born in London, raised in London, and shaped by growing up here. Charlie Chaplin was born in 1889 in Walworth, South London, and his childhood wasn't charming or theatrical or glamorous. It was hard. His parents were performers, but they struggled for money. At times, his family had nothing. He even spent part of his childhood in a workhouse, and that matters because the character he became famous for. The tramp isn't just funny. He's poor, he's struggling. He's always one step away from disaster. That's not an American invention, that's British reality. Chaplin didn't even move to the United States until his 20s. By the time Hollywood got hold of him, his humour, his timing, his worldview were already fully formed. So yes, one of the most recognisable figures in film history was a British bloke from South London who just happened to become one of the biggest stars on earth. This next one really should be obvious, and yet somehow it never is, because this man didn't just change one thing, he changed how the entire world works. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, is British, born in London in 1955, to parents who both worked on early computers, which already feels very on-brand. Now, quick clarification, he did not invent the internet itself. That's a different thing entirely. What he invented was the web pages, links, URLs, the idea that you could click on something and be taken somewhere else. And here's the most British part of all. He didn't patent it. He didn't sell it. He didn't lock it behind a company. He just gave it away for free. No ownership, no paywall, no premium version. Just here you go. Everyone can use this. So yes, the thing you're using right now, the thing that runs social media, online banking, shopping, work, entertainment, and basically modern life exists because a British man decided it would be better if it belonged to everyone, which is either incredibly generous or completely mad, depending on how long you've spent online. This next one isn't about accents or appearances, it's about a name, because most people don't even realise this person is British, because that's not the name he was born with. George Orwell, the author of 1984, Animal Farm, and some of the most quoted political writing in history, was British. He was born in India in 1903, when India was still part of the British Empire. His father worked for the British colonial administration, and like many British families at the time, Orwell didn't stay there long. He was brought to England as a small child and raised almost entirely in Britain, educated in English schools, surrounded by English class systems, English institutions, and English ideas of power. His real name was Eric Arthur Blair, which already sounds incredibly British. He chose the name George Orwell on purpose. George, because it felt solid, traditional, dependable. And Orwell, after an English river, because he wanted to sound unmistakably English. Orwell wasn't a distant observer. He lived what he wrote about. He worked low-paying jobs. He lived among the poor. He saw how power actually worked on the ground. And that's why his books don't feel theoretical. They feel uncomfortably real. Big Brother, constant surveillance, manipulated language, truth being rewritten. All of it came from a British writer watching his own society very carefully. So yes, one of the most influential political authors of all time. Wasn't American, wasn't some abstract philosopher. He was a British man with a pen, a pseudonym, and a very clear warning. This next one catches a lot of people out because when you think of his films, you think Hollywood, big budgets, big stars, big American accents, but the man behind them is British, Ridley Scott, the director of Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, and Black Hawk Down. Was born in South Shields in the northeast of England in 1937. His father was in the Royal Air Force, which meant Scott spent his childhood moving around the country, growing up on British military bases, surrounded by discipline, structure, and hierarchy, which suddenly explains a lot. Before Hollywood ever got involved, Ridley Scott worked in British television, directing adverts.
In the showdown between the colas, there's only one deciding factor: great taste. Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
Learning how to tell a story quickly, visually, and efficiently, and you can see that in his films. The control, the atmosphere, the obsession with detail, even when he's filming America, even when he's filming space. There's something very British about the way he does it. Cold, precise, slightly bleak. So yes, some of the most iconic American-looking films ever made were directed by a British man from the north of England who just happened to conquer Hollywood without ever really sounding like he belonged there. This next one starts off normal enough, and then it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous. Christopher Lee, best known as Dracula, Saruman, and Count Dooku, was British, born in London in 1922, but acting was only a small part of his life, because before Hollywood, before Hammer Horror, before Lord of the Rings, he fought in the Second World War, and not in a background role kind of way. He served in the Royal Air Force, and later worked with Special Operations Units, which is where things get a bit quiet, because large parts of what he did were classified. He spoke multiple languages. He moved across Europe during the war, and when people asked him what he actually did, his answer was usually, "I'm not allowed to talk about it." There's even a moment on a film set where a director tried to explain what someone sounds like when they're stabbed in the back, and Christopher Lee calmly said, "I know what that sounds like," then suggested they move on. No explanation, no follow-up, just absolute silence. And as if that wasn't enough, later in life, he recorded a heavy metal album in his 90s, because of course he did. So yes, one of the most iconic villains in film history was a British man, war veteran, linguist, possible secret agent, who also happened to become an actor. This next one really catches people out, because in your head, he sounds completely American. Not slightly, not kind of, fully. Christian Bale. Batman, Patrick Bateman, John Connor, is British, born in Wales, in 1974, to English parents, and raised partly in England. Bale started acting young, very young, and by the time most people first saw him, he was already using an American accent, which he never really stopped using for role after role after role. So much so that when people first heard his real voice, they thought he was the one putting on an accent. Even casting directors were surprised. Bale has said he sometimes avoids using his real accent in interviews because it throws people off, which is incredible, because it means one of the most intense American screen presences of the last 30 years is actually British and has been quietly hiding it in plain sight. So yes, the voice you associate with Wall Street psychopaths, Gotham City vigilantes, and grim Hollywood intensity belongs to a British actor who just happens to do American a little too well. Thanks for watching another British Facts video, this time about faces you may have known or been aware of, but didn't realise were British. If you want more British facts, subscribe. A like really helps this channel grow, and if you want to keep watching, YouTube's already recommended another video on screen right now.